So glad you could join us for this new episode of Faithful Resistance from Jefferson Unitarian Church in Golden. This time we're focusing on resistance work through the UUSC, the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. This is an international organization with a long history of resistance work, as in it was established in 1940 as the Unitarian Service Committee to help refugees in Europe escape Nazi persecution. There hasn't been a day since that the UUSC hasn't been involved in human rights work somewhere in the world, including, of course, the United States. And then at Jefferson Unitarian Church, we've had a UUSC task force for more than 20 years. Since the new president was sworn in, UUSC's work has been expanding both internationally and at JUC. On the local side, we're going to talk with JUC's own quiet UUSC leader, Gretchen May. First, though, we'll speak with the UUSC's Director of Advocacy in Boston. We're so pleased today to be speaking with Salote Sango, who is with the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, which is a national, actually an international organization. And she is the Director of Advocacy. Welcome, and we're glad that you could join us today. I wondered if you'd talk a little bit about what you do to begin with as Director of Advocacy.
Thank you for having me, Chris. As a Director for Advocacy at UUSC, I oversee a team of highly skilled individuals who support our work and our advocacy framework. Our advocacy work is grounded in our partnerships with directly impacted communities. And what we do is we basically translate their needs and priorities into policy language for effective advocacy with the United States government and with the United Nations through the help of Unitarian Universalists across the country.
UUSC's new resistance network is what I would love to hear about next. And since the Trump administration began, you've started this resistance network. Tell me first kind of the broad strokes of what the resistance network is doing.
Yeah, so the Resistance Network is really a rapid response mobilization platform that we are using to mobilize and activate Unitarian Universalists across the country and people of conscience to really leverage their power, their love of community, and their faith to hold their elected officials accountable in a way to defend their civil liberties, our democracy, and human rights. You're right, Chris. We had to determine how we rapidly being the key term, mobilize Unitarian Universalists because of the barrage of human rights abusive policies that we knew was coming from this administration. So this is really a platform to allow them to channel their energy, to channel their solidarity with impacted communities, and to take action.
I would love an example of the things that you've been able to already rapidly mobilize.
Of course. So the Resistance Network is designed around 5 objectives: advancing migration justice, protecting the rights of trans and gender diverse people, strengthening the role of civil society to defend against authoritarianism, defending the role of international institutions, and advancing climate justice. Since the Resistance Network was launched in March, we've launched 4 actions across 4 of these objectives. And one of the actions that we just recently did was asking UUs to contact their elected representatives around the barbaric ways that this administration is rounding up immigrants, regardless of their status in the United States, doing it arbitrarily and deporting them back to countries that are violent, that have a very high record of human rights abuse without any due process.
I think it's the thing that has received the most attention across the country. I do. The news stories we see every day practically about this are awful. So when you say reach out to their public officials, what kind of response have you received so far?
From UUs, we've received an overwhelming amount of responses. We started with 0 essentially, and now we're at around 700 Unitarian Universalists that have taken action. We've not received any acknowledgement from this administration, but we have received, those automatic responses from their congressional reps, which means that they're listening, that they're getting, the news and the thoughts from their own constituency to do something about it. We received information from our partners, just appreciation knowing that we as an organization and Unitarian Universalists are there in solidarity with them.
I know that I fear that there are some people who think that a phone call to a member of Congress is not going to do a darn thing. But what's the thinking behind large numbers and the possibility that it could make a difference?
Yes, I mean, right now we know that we can't be doing this alone. They're joining hands and joining forces together and with across institutions who are also mobilizing their own constituencies and their own members is really important. So massive protests, massive actions, massive phone calls and letters to our elected representatives. We're holding them to the fire and we can't give up. But we're not working in silos. Narrative change, ensuring that the voices and experiences of those that are directly impacted gets in the news. That's mobilizing public fora. We are building consciousness in this moment, and I think it's such an important thing to do. And we can't do that by ourselves. We need each other.
I wonder what brings you to this work. We all sometimes a personal story makes all the difference.
Yeah. Well, my faith requires that I act to build the community that I want, that is aligned with my values, a community that accepts diversity, respect, and tolerance for each other, a community that helps those in need, and holds each other accountable to our shared humanity. I am also an Indigenous woman. I'm an Indigenous leader and a mother. And my identity requires that I shape the future where my children can thrive and for the next generations that will come after. I think I also have a responsibility as a person of color, as an immigrant myself, as someone who comes from a country that has experienced the harms of climate change that's caused by this very country to shape the governance systems that will offer real justice-centered solutions. And I grew up in a country that was colonized and still to this day is trying to really live up to the ideals of what a democracy looks like. And I think that's such a privilege for me to exercise here and for UUs and people who consider themselves Americans to really shape the democracy that they want to see for their own children. So it's a number of reasons, but I think those ones are the ones that I value most.
What do you feel in this country right now? Do you feel, as a woman of color, do you feel support? Do you feel fear? Do you feel disgust? There's probably a range of emotions like that. What do you worry about? What do you feel about?
I feel a range of emotions depending on the day. I think the work that I do at UUSC brings me hope. It's a ray of light in this very dark moment. I've had the opportunity to speak with state action networks, UU state action networks across the country for the past few months. And I am so inspired by the level of care, the energy that they're growing and building within UU congregations. I mean, that is amazing, amazing work. That's also hard work. And I feel such a strong sense of solidarity and joy from just learning about all the work that's happening. It's not easy. We're not living in easy times, but I think if we look down to, I mean, not down, but if we look at what's happening in our own communities, we'll see rays of sunshine and hope. And that has been really encouraging.
What is it about your faith? I hear you say your faith calls you to do this, but what specifically about your faith, what values are motivating you right now?
I would say love for each other, regardless of our own experiences. We have much more in common than we have different, regardless of your political views. That is really what's centering me in this moment.
Do you have much opportunity to speak with people who look at life very differently from you? You know, we accuse the other side of othering us, and I find sometimes I'm othering them. I just wonder, do you have much face-to-face contact with people who just think that you're on the wrong track? And what do you do when you have those conversations?
Yes, I do. Um, I think I have some advantages of um, naivety, I suppose, of coming from a country and a culture that doesn't wear politics um, as a sense of identity. It, that has really helped me to engage on a more human level with folks whose political opinions are different than mine. Um, and I always try and find a way to, find common ground. We all need to eat and live and breathe clean air. We all need a healthy planet to survive. Um, but I think that I had to unlearn a lot of things, but understanding people's humanity and dignity is forefront, has been really important as I engage um, my neighbors, my community, and folks, even my family whose political values differ.
Yeah, that's the really hard part, isn't it? When you're at a family dinner or something and you either have a really awkward conversation or you can't talk about it at all.
Yeah.
Um, I want to go back to the efforts to mobilize, and I wonder, when you said 700 people had reached out that you know of to their congressional delegations, it seems great and it seems small. Do we Unitarian Universalists have the numbers, and if not, what can we do to really leverage the numbers that we do have?
Yeah. Well, one is this is a direct invitation to Unitarian Universalists. Thank you for your generosity of spirit and resistance. I know even if you haven't signed up and taken action, that you are with us in solidarity. Please sign up to the Resistance Network at uusc.org/network and join us in this journey. Please reach out to your USC, to your UUSC liaisons within your congregations, and we'll build this um, boat, if you will, up together, slowly and steady. We're not in a rush, but we'd like to invite you all to join us.
Thank you. And thanks for the invitation and the website and the encouragement to join, because that's what's going to make the difference at the end of the day, or the end of the term, or the end of the midterms. Anything else that you'd like to add about the Faithful Resistance Network that we haven't touched on?
Yes, the Resistance Network is also a place to celebrate each other's resistance and solidarity. So we're inviting Unitarian Universalists to share how you're resisting on the ground. There's a lot of news that's happening. There's a lot of uplifting stories, but they're mostly from organizations and institutions that are nationwide. We'd love to uplift uplift any local stories of resistance that are UU-led and UU designed. So please share that with us as well. It's also acting as a resource hub, and it's really designed to meet you where you are. So whether you're just learning about trans resistance and what that looks like and what you could do, please access our resource hub. Let us know what you need to help you in your journey, and we'd love to find ways to support that as well.
Thank you, and thanks for taking the time to be with us today on our version of Faithful Resistance. Best of luck to you, and thanks.
Thank you so much, Chris.
And now we turn to our local version of UUSC at JUC. It's been known for years as the group that supports scholarships for dozens and dozens of Mayan high school girls and a few boys in Guatemala. But in this day and age, its work is expanding too. So welcome, Gretchen. We're so glad you could be here today on our UUSC episode of Faithful Resistance. My understanding now is, considering the new administration in Washington, that the work of UUSC, even in our congregation, is expanding. So tell me what you're trying to do to expand that justice work.
So I'll read you the statement that we decided on, because we named our group Support for the Vulnerable because we want to provide support for everyone in the community who finds himself threatened by the new policies. And so our purpose is to find out what can JUC do to be radically supportive of immigrants and other threatened people in our larger community. And that it's taking time to find that. There's a lot going on, but it's happening, it's impacting this community slowly. The three areas that we've actually been able to be effective are Know Your Rights, which is the first thing, and that's an ongoing project, which is to just make sure that everybody knows what their rights are, in particular immigrants when they're approached by ICE or any kind of security services. And so we've done distributions in communities and we've done distributions in public places, and we'll continue to do that. And then the state of Colorado has had legislation that was put forward to protect the rights of immigrants in the state and reinforce laws that we already had. And now the challenge is, and our challenge is, to make sure they're implemented.
And that's all the different areas that you're talking about, accompanying and legislation and Know Your Right and all that. We are a faith-based way of looking at these kinds of things. So I want to ask you, what is in your heart and what is it in your faith that leads you to do this work? I mean, you've been doing this for 20 years. You're one of those quiet leaders, but a consistent leader. What keeps you going?
When you actually see what's happening to individuals, then I think when you know their stories, it's impossible to think that the world can be better unless you can help their life be better. I think we owe it to the world, really, to stand up for what's right and not look the other way.
So yeah, these personal stories that we hear about in the news, that we hear about from friends, what has affected you the most recently about these people, particularly about immigrants and the way they're being treated?
One is a woman who was taken into detention in October. She's a nurse. She has 2 children, husband, and they were able to get a defense team together to try and, there wasn't any reason for her to be in detention, to try and get her out of detention. And in May, the second week of May, she had a court hearing where the judge granted her the right to be in this country, and therefore she shouldn't be in detention. And she has been kept another 30 days to give the government time to appeal. And it just, when you start to fill in, the actual people in that situation, her children who haven't seen their mother, they may have been able to have a phone conversation once in a while since October, and then to actually win and think you're about to walk out the door and no, sorry, you're going to be in here another 30 days is really heartbreaking. I don't know what help the father had, but the organizations around the area step in and provide transportation for the children to get to school, because the parent who isn't detained can't handle all that. So you have these young children, and the last case was, I think, a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old, and they're living with a family they'd never met before. And, there's a different person every day is picking them up and taking them to school, and someone else taking them home again. And the last person who took them, who was from JUC, they really acted out. I mean, she fortunately was a teacher and kept her cool, but they were just acting out. And she said, why wouldn't they? They've had this experience of just being separated completely from their family. And again, it's just heartbreaking to think of what that is for those children and for the parents who can't be with them, who can't take care of their children. And it's just happening over and over.
So what can a person listening to you do to help at Jefferson Unitarian Church?
So there are different ways to help. One way is to simply show up, to show your support, and just be part of the body of people who are opposing the detention. What's really helpful is to know that people are prepared to respond quickly when we get a request. And then the other way, making calls and writing letters to our political representatives and putting pressure on them to do the right thing, because they are all acting as though they really are more concerned about the next election than about what's going on. And Democratic senators need to be standing up, and even if they think, well, we don't have the votes, they need to be standing up and speaking out. And we need to let them know that we want them to do that.
And there's also the UUSC Support for the Vulnerable meeting that you have every other Wednesday at Jefferson Unitarian Church at 6 o'clock. See if you can find some time in your life to help and do this important work, along with Gretchen and all the others of the UUSC committee at Jefferson Unitarian Church. Thank you, Gretchen, for talking to us today. If you have ideas for topics or people to talk to, please email us at faithfulresistance@jeffersonunitarian.org. And please share this podcast with other people of goodwill and subscribe yourself. And for opportunities for social justice action and education, everything from marches and protests to classes and many other ways to do your part, please check out the Faithful Resistance page at our website, jeffersonunitarian.org. And as always, keep on doing the next right thing. Go out and do the next right thing.